Hello summoners and welcome back to another ProGuides patch rundown. My name is Christoph and today I'll be going over all the changes that were made in patch 9.16. I'll cover all the details including a tier list for each role that was made by our challenger analysts and partnered pro players. There were a ton of changes this patch, which raised a lot of questions. Will the reworked Pantheon be OP? Are the Riven nerfs going to gut her? Will the Lux buffs make her S+ again? Don't worry, we got you guys covered and we'll answer all these questions in this video. But as always, since the patch just hit the live servers, please do keep in mind that these tier lists are purely predictions. We encourage all of our viewers to comment down below and say if you agree or disagree with specific champion placements. Also, as a reminder, there'll be an updated tier list next week where we use fresh stats to give you guys the best and most accurate tier lists available. But before we get started, I want you guys to click the link below to check out ProGuides.com. Our tier lists do help give you guys some knowledge on the meta, but if you guys are looking to take your play to the next level, then I recommend you click the link below to go to ProGuides.com. We've been adding daily videos to help you guys improve. We've been doing some more advanced content as well, and we have 24/7 challenger coaches to help you guys start winning more games immediately. Click the link below if you're interested. And before we jump right into the video, I also want to mention that our patch 9.16 video for TFT is coming up on our ProGuides TFT YouTube channel. Click the description link below to sub to that channel so you can get that patch video as well. Alright, now with that being said, let's jump right into the video. First things first, let's go over some of the biggest changes hitting the Rift in patch 9.16. The much anticipated Pantheon rework will be live sometime this patch, and his new kit is looking amazing. From the looks of it, our analysts are predicting that he'll be a very powerful champion with a low skill cap, so almost anyone can pick him up right away and abuse him for some free low. If you want to learn some secret tips and tricks for how to get easy wins with him, then make sure to check out our previous video, the only Pantheon guide you'll ever need. We go in depth with his new kit so you can be more prepared when you play him and catch your opponents off guard. However, since he's freshly reworked, our challenger analysts will be following their general rule and will not add him to our tier list this patch. But don't worry, he'll be in our mid-patch update next week, so make sure to click that sub button if you want to be notified. Here's a quick slideshow of his new skins. Now tell me these don't look badass. My personal favorite is Perseus Pantheon because he's literally holding onto Medusa's head as a shield. Let us know what you guys think of the new Panth skins and tell us down below which ones are your favorites. Speaking of new skins, the 1,595-day drought is finally over, and Dragon Oracle Udyr will be available sometime this week. Also, Hextech Rammus will also be available soon, so make sure to save your gemstones for that. And finally, we have a huge change to the inspiration tree, specifically the Biscuit delivery rune. Biscuits is one of the most common runes used in pretty much every lane. We get top laners like Jax and Irelia, mid laners like LeBlanc and Orianna, AD carries like Kai'Sa and Lucian, and supports like Nami and Janna who all take this rune for the extra sustain. However, not only is this rune very popular, but it's also very powerful with Time Warp Tonic. Due to these reasons, Biscuits will see a lot of changes in patch 9.16. Firstly, the time you receive the free Biscuits will be lowered from 3 minutes to 2 minutes. Next, the restore rate has been changed from 15% of your missing health to 10%. For Manaless champions, it also has been adjusted from 20% of your missing health to 12%. Lastly, the mana cap has been increased from 40 mana to 50 mana overall. These nerfs do hurt, but we'll still continue to see quite a few champs take this rune. Free sustain in lane is pretty powerful for champions who are consistently fighting or getting poked. Alright, now it's time for the champion balance changes. Let's jump right into the top lane. Despite receiving a ton of major buffs a couple of patches ago, Dr. Mundo has been struggling in the meta quite a bit. He holds one of the lowest win rates, play rates, and ban rates in the game, which put him in our top lane D tier for the past few patches. For patch 9.16, Dr. Mundo is receiving 2 excellent buffs which will improve his stance in the meta. Firstly, his W, Burning Agony, will have its tenacity increased from 10 to 30% to 30% at all ranks. Next up, his E, Masochism, will have its cooldown changed from 6 seconds to 6 to 4 seconds depending on the skill level. Although these changes are very good, Mundo will likely continue to struggle in patch 9.16. The amount of healing reduction, mobility, CC, and bad matchups in the game are aligned with Mundo's weaknesses, and he will be placed in our top lane C tier. Much like Mundo, Fiora has received a lot of major buffs recently and is looking to become even stronger in patch 9.16. Her E, Blade Work, will have its bonus attack speed increased from 50% to 50 to 90% and is followed by a cooldown reduction from 13 to 5 seconds to 11 to 5 seconds. Combine these two buffs with an early Tiamat and you become a wave-shoving machine. Although the added attack speed is a nice touch, the biggest buff is actually the 2-second cooldown reduction on her E at rank 1. Making this ability more spammable will allow her to find more opportunities to quickly trade with her opponents, and her stance in the meta will improve overall. Thus, Fiora will be placed in our A tier for this patch, but we'll see if she can make the push to S tier in our mid-patch update. Jax is one of the strongest top laners in the game currently and is looking to become even stronger in patch 9.16. The Balance team are adding a simple buff to his Q, Leap Strike, which will have its cooldown reduced from 10 to 6 seconds to 8 to 6 seconds. Having 2 seconds off your Q will allow you to max E in pretty much every matchup now, and Jax mains are loving this buff. Jax will take his place back in our S tier for patch 9.16. It appears that our prayers have finally been answered, and Riven will be receiving a nerf this patch. She's been in our S tier for far too long and was long overdue for some balance changes. Her Q, Broken Wings, will have its cooldown nerfed from 12 to 10 seconds to 12 seconds at all ranks. These changes will not impact her stance in the meta by a significant amount. For a champion who rushes 45% CDR within the first few items, the nerfs will only be apparent during the early game. Riven mains can continue to play their comfort pick this patch, and she'll remain in our S tier for patch 9.16. Shen has held a decent stance in the meta recently and is actually one of the most underrated top laners in the game. He holds a decent play rate and win rate, but it's looking to get even better next patch. His Q, Twilight Assault, will have its max HP on hit increase from 4 to 6% to 5 to 7%. On top of that, his E, Shadow Dash, will have its damage increased from 50 to 150 to 60 to 160. These are some excellent changes for Shen's laning phase, but again, they won't impact his stance in the meta too much. Shen will remain in our top lane B tier, but we'll see if he dashes into our A tier for our mid-patch update. Singed will have some minor adjustments to his mana regen, base AD, and attack speed this patch. On top of that, his base mana will be increased from 290 to 330, and his ultimate Insanity Potion will have its bonus stats increased from 30 to 80 to 30 to 90. These changes are very minor and won't impact his stance in the meta significantly. Singed will remain in our D tier this patch. And finally, we have Sion. Sion will have a few minor adjustments to his base HP, base mana, and regen this patch. On top of that, his Q, Decimating Smash, will have its damage increased by 10 on its minimum amount and 10 to 30 on its maximum amount. Sion will remain in our top lane C tier. The top lane tier list sees a couple of changes this patch due to the sheer amount of balance changes made to the top laners. Sitting at the S+ tier all by himself again is Kled. Kled is still the best top laner in the game due to the addition of healing reduction on his Q. He is a great counter pick to pretty much any of our top lane S tier champions because they all rely heavily on healing in their kits or runes. And in our S tier we have Riven, Darius, Vladimir, Mordekaiser, Renekton, Alawi, and welcoming back a familiar face, Jax. Jax received a small buff to his Q this patch, which has moved him back into our S tier for patch 9.16. Allowing him to max E second instead of Q will help him a lot in matchups and definitely improve his stance in the meta. And in our A tier, we have one new member, and that's going to be Akali. Akali received a couple of buffs a few weeks ago, and her stance in the meta has become a lot better. In fact, she's at about a 49% win rate in the top lane right now, with a 6% pick rate, which is a lot better than her previous 41%. Hopefully her win rate doesn't keep steadily increasing the way it is now, because that would definitely lead to some nerfs. Alright, now let's move on to the jungle. For all you jungle mains out there, we have a ton of great resources on ProGuides.com to help you out with your jungle pathing, your vision, your awareness, and your overall game knowledge. Click the link down below and check it out. Let's start off with Nocturne. Nocturne will have a few of his stats adjusted this patch, followed by a buff to his base armor. Next, his W, Shroud of Darkness, will have its bonus attack speed increased from 20 to 40% to 30 to 50%. These buffs are not that impactful, and Nocturne will remain in our jungle C tier this patch. Despite receiving a couple of nerfs a few weeks ago, Sejuani has managed to hold her high presence rate in competitive play. For patch 9.16, Sejuani is looking to receive a few changes to adjust and balance out her power spikes within the game. Her passive Fury of the North will have its bonus MR and armor changed from 20 plus 25% to 10 plus 35%. Next, her Q, Arctic Assault, will have its cooldown increased from 17 to 11 to 20 to 12. These changes are aimed at nerfing Sejuani's early game, which will allow the opposing jungler to have more opportunities to abuse her weaknesses. Sejuani will remain in our jungle A tier this patch. Even after the nerfs made a few patches ago, Sylas jungle has been thriving in the meta and is being gutted in patch 9.16. His Q, Chain Lash's detonation, will now do 45% reduced damage against minions and monsters in order to slow down his first clear. This change, combined with the shield rework on his E, will likely remove Sylas from the jungle completely. He can barely survive his first clear already, but now that it's become even slower, he'll likely be gutted from the jungle. For this reason, Sylas will be removed from our jungle tier list. The jungle tier list remains pretty similar due to there not being too many balance changes in the jungle. In our S tier, we have Hecarim, J4, Elise, Karthus, Vi, Nunu, and Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix received a huge buff to his Q last patch, which skyrocketed his win rate and ban rate into our S tier. The extra base damage lets him clear his camps much faster, and you can really feel the change once you get in the game. In our A tier, we have a few notable picks which are rising in popularity and might even make the push to S tier, who are Nidalee and Gragas. Nidalee and Gragas received a few buffs recently, and they're two of the most underrated junglers in our A tier at the moment. They're both very good junglers for solo queue and can definitely help you get to your dream rank. But the best part is they have a pretty low presence in solo queue, so you're pretty much guaranteed to get them whenever you want. Alright, now let's move on to the mid lane. Azir has held a very high priority rate in competitive play despite being one of the lowest win rate champions for solo queue. His safety, damage, wave clear, and peel makes him the ideal mid laner for pro players, and he's looking to receive a nerf this patch. His Q, Conquering Sands, will have its cooldown change from 15 to 5 seconds to 15 to 7 seconds. You'll likely not be impacted too much by these nerfs because games usually last around 25 minutes, but for competitive play this will impact his stance in the meta for sure. Azir will be placed in our mid lane B tier this patch. Much like Azir, Corki has held a very high presence in competitive play as well, and unfortunately that means he's going to be nerfed. His base AD has been lowered from 60 to 55, and his AD per level has been lowered from 3 to 2.5. These changes will affect Corki's power spikes, especially with items like Shen, and he'll be a bit weaker than he is now. However, Corki will still be a powerful pick in the meta and will be placed in our mid lane B tier this patch. Echo has held a solid stance in the meta and is looking to become even stronger this patch. His E phase dive will have its magic damage increased by 10 at all ranks, followed by a huge cooldown buff to his ultimate Chrono Break. Having the 10 extra damage in his E will allow him to trade a lot better during the laning phase, and the cooldown buff on his ult will allow him to play much more aggressively later on. Echo will be placed in our A tier this patch. Kassadin has also held a solid stance in the meta and will receive one huge buff this patch to his W, Netherblade. Netherblade will have its damage increased from 40 to 140 to 70 to 170. This is a massive buff, and it'll pretty much let Kassadin auto-win trades versus melee AP champions like Echo, Fizz, and Akali. Kassadin will be placed in our A tier for now, but he's a great contender to make the push to S tier in our mid-patch update. LeBlanc has held a decent stance in the meta and will receive a buff to her Q this patch. Sigil of Malice will have its AP ratio increased from 30 to 40%. Having the extra bonuses will allow her to one-shot targets faster than before and also trade more effectively in lane. LeBlanc will be placed in our A tier this patch. Next up, we have Syndra. Syndra received some huge buffs to her kit recently, but they just weren't enough to make an impact on her stance in the meta. For patch 9.16, Syndra's Q, Dark Sphere, will have its transcendent damage increased from 20 to 100 to 30 to 110. In addition to that, her E, Scatter the Weak, will have its max damage increased from 60 to 300 to 70 to 310. Although these two changes seem pretty small, you have to remember that Syndra's ultimate was buffed in patch 9.15. This means that she'll now do more damage with her Q, E, and ultimate, increasing her combo damage by a sizable amount. Syndra will be placed in our A tier for patch 9.16. Lastly, for the mid lane, we have Ziggs. Ziggs has been struggling in the meta for quite some time and was long overdue for some buffs. He has one of the lowest play rates in the game despite his wave clear, burst, and zoning. This patch, Ziggs will receive a buff to his W, Satchel Charge, which will have its AP increased from 35% to 50%. On top of that, the cooldown of this ability has been reduced from 24 to 12 to 20 to 12. Next up, his ultimate Mega Inferno Bomb will have its cooldown lowered from 120 to 90 to 120 to 70. Although these changes are great, Ziggs will still be placed in our C tier this patch. The mid lane tier list sees a few changes for patch 9.16. In our S+ tier, we have the one and only Fizz. Fizz received a rework on his passive not too long ago, and it's boosted his win rate into our S+ tier. He is definitely one of the best, if not the best champion in the mid lane right now, and you should add him to your champ pool. In S tier, we have Zed, Ahri, Katarina, Vladimir, Malzahar, Talon, and Qiyana. These champions shouldn't come as a surprise to you because they've been placed in our S tier before. In our A tier, we welcome Syndra, LeBlanc, and Echo, who all received some pretty big buffs this patch and are great pickups for patch 9.16. Lastly, in our A tier, we also are going to keep a close eye on Kassadin because the buffs made to his kit were actually really big. We'll make sure to keep you updated in our mid-patch analysis video next week, so click that sub button if you want to be notified. Alright, on to the ADCs. Ezreal has been one of the safest and strongest AD carries in the game while also being flexible enough to build into AP. For patch 9.16, Ezreal is looking to receive some heavy nerfs which will definitely drop him out of the S tier. His Q, Mystic Shot, will have its AP ratio cut in half, followed by a 6-second cooldown increase during the early game on his E, Arcane Shift. These changes will not only reduce Ezreal's burst, but will also limit his flexibility when it comes to builds, while also cutting down on his safety. Ezreal will be dropped to our A tier this patch. Sivir has been in our S tier for multiple patches now and is finally receiving a significant nerf. Her W Ricochet will have its AD ratio lowered from 50 to 70% to 30 to 70%. This is a pretty big nerf, guys. When it comes to Sivir's burst during the early game to mid game, it's going to drop her down to our A tier. The AD carry tier list sees a ton of changes this patch, and in our S tier we have Draven, Jinx, Vayne, Kai'Sa, and 2 new members, Jhin and Xayah. Jhin's win rate has been steadily increasing over the past few weeks, and with Sivir gone, he's able to become one of the best AD carries in the game. Xayah shares a similar story with Jhin, and she's solidified her stance as an S tier pick with Sivir becoming a lot weaker. In our A tier, we have a few notable picks, which are Caitlyn and Varus. With Biscuits receiving a nerf this patch, lane bullies and poke champions have become so much stronger. Caitlyn is able to bully out her opponents even harder now, and it's going to be really rough for non-early game ADCs to keep up. Varus has been placed in our A tier this patch due to his poke build becoming even more oppressive. Alright, lastly we have our supports. We didn't forget about you guys. Lux received a ton of heavy nerfs recently, and her win rate and play rate have dropped significantly. Aftershock's Lux was just too oppressive and lacked counterplay due to the tank stats removing one of her biggest weaknesses. In patch 9.16, Lux is receiving a small buff to her W, Prismatic Barrier, which will have its shield strength increased from 50 to 110 to 50 to 150. As a result, Lux will be placed in our support B tier this patch. Despite being one of the lowest win rate champs in the game, Tahm Kench will have his base movement speed nerfed from 345 to 335, followed by a shield duration nerf to his E, Thick Skin. These changes are pretty significant and will drop Tahm into our D tier this patch. Yumi is definitely one of the most oppressive support picks in the game and is looking to receive a few changes for patch 9.16. Her Q, Prowling Projectile, will have its empowered damage lowered from 50 to 270 to 50 to 225. On top of that, the slow amount has been nerfed as well from 40 to 80% to 20 to 80%, and the cooldown has been increased by 2 seconds during the early to mid game. However, this is followed by a small compensation buff to the slow duration, which has been increased from 1.25 to 1.75 seconds to 1.5 seconds at all ranks. Yumi will be dropped into our support B tier this patch. The support tier list sees a couple of changes made this patch. In our S+ tier, we have the same 3 members who are Pyke, Nautilus, and Thresh. These 3 champs are a notch above the rest and will give you the best chances at winning more ranked games. In our S tier, we have Nami, Janna, Morgana, Bard, Blitzcrank, and a new member, Leona. Leona received a few changes recently, and her presence in solo queue has gone up by a lot. Her aggressive playstyle is super hard to beat unless you're playing as Morgana, so make sure to add her to your champion pool. That's it for our patch 9.16 rundown. If you guys enjoyed this video, then please leave a like, comment, and sub to our channel to be notified for our next one. Make sure to check out our website for in-depth guides and content that were made by your favorite pro players, or just to pick yourself up a great coach. The second part of our meta analysis video will be available next week, which will bring you guys the most accurate tier list available. Thank you guys so much for watching. Good luck in your next few games, and we'll see you on the Rift.